And so no one joined the organization in the 8 years I was there without going through orientation. Some people would be too busy to go to orientation. Well, I have a list. I would find them and make sure they were in the next orientation.
I'm Dr. Joey Fawcett, and if this is your first time checking out the Work Positive podcast, I'm a positive culture architect who has successfully coached organizations to create a positive work culture for over 40 years, helped lots of companies grow and organizations grow people and profits. I'm the author of about a dozen #1 Amazon best-selling books, all about culture and helping you solve your biggest problems around culture. Each week, I interview some really smart people who are thought leaders and practicing people leaders who we can learn so much from. So I'm happy to share someone with you today who talks about influence. So let's think about your influence for a moment as a people leader. How effective is your influence? Do you think about it very much? My guest on this episode led Accenture for 22 years, 10 as a senior partner, and he was the CIO at the University of Texas at Austin. Hook 'em horns, right? Where he influenced technology and helped modernize their technology to serve some 54,000 students, 4,000 faculty, and 21,000 staff. He's written a book, and we're going to talk about that today, Sphere of Influence, How to Create and Nurture Authentic Business Relationships. And we're all about authenticity in the Work Positive podcast, right? And in the Work Positive community. So let's consider your sphere of influence as a people leader on this episode of the Work Positive podcast. Work Positive community, help me welcome to this episode of the Work Positive podcast, Brad Englert. Brad, I just got to say, buddy, as a word of welcome, hook 'em horns.
Thank you. Hook 'em.
So you used to hang out with Matthew McConaughey on the sidelines at the football games?
That's right.
Yeah.
When you're chief information officer at the University of Texas at Austin, you get an all-access pass to the game. So
Oh, wow.
I got to get in the press box, go down on the field, whatever. It was fun.
I'm glad my wife doesn't know you because she would have left me to go with you to the sidelines to be with Matthew McConaughey. That's great. And shout out to my son-in-law who has taught our granddaughter how to say Bebo is a very young child. So, Brad, I am delighted because anybody that writes a book titled Spheres of Influence, and I love especially 2 words in the subtitle, How to Create and Nurture Authentic Business Relationships. You are our kind of guy for the Work Positive community. Obviously, you're a superhero, worked with Accenture, then at the University of Texas at Austin for so many years. Every superhero has an origin story. So what's yours, Brad?
Well, I started with the firm after graduate school, and the first day my mentor pulled me aside and said, the people you work with today down the road may become a boss, may become a customer. So treat them very well. Your customer may become your boss one day.
Wow.
And it was a culture of mentoring and coaching, a value of training your employees, so they just have that expectation that even as a senior partner, 3 months before I retired, I was up in our training center teaching project management with another few partners to 200 people from all over the world.
Wow.
And so even as a senior partner, you could not teach. And you always were a mentor and had a mentor. So, I think that culture is what I brought to the university.
Wow.
Or that superpower.
That superpower, man, that is a superpower because so often we see organizations not even get the onboarding process right.
Right.
And you just come on and they say, oh, we didn't know you were going to show up today, much less.
Well, 20 years later, the guy I worked with on that first project became a customer.
Wow. I love that.
True.
Sense of mutual respect and really honoring each person with whom you have a relationship with. Talk about trust and the importance of trust in our spheres of influence, Brad.
Well, it's really the fundamental to all business relationships. And whether it's your boss or your direct reports or your customers, you have to really be honest and tell the truth.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm working with an organization right now, and first thing we did was identify their core essentials. That's number one. Tell the truth. Why is it
Yeah.
so hard for us today to trust and develop trusting relationships, Brad?
Well, I think it starts from the top. If you have an organization, I had 330 people in central IT and inherited a culture that was heroics and fire drills were the mode of the day. And so they rewarded heroics.
Mm-hmm.
And three of my direct reports were not truthful. And so over the first 6 to 9 months, I had to replace three of my direct reports. And I was frankly a little surprised by that. It was a culture of not telling the truth. And so the first thing we did was we articulated the values of the organization. My first 90 days working with the campus, what did they want from us? Working with my direct reports, my boss. And you know what the first value was? Family first.
Wow.
Now, why would we do that? Because I live in Austin, Texas. All the huge technology firms are here. I cannot compete on salary, but I certainly can promise an 8-hour day.
So I can have
And
a
the
life.
other values were be truthful, collaborate, proactive customer service, and make decisions with data that helps the customer. And so no one joined the organization in the 8 years I was there without going through orientation, where we would meet once a month with all my direct reports, and each they get to meet them. Some people would be too busy to go to orientation. Well, I have a list. I would find them and make sure they were in the next orientation.
Here comes Brad.
It's not optional. And because I wanted them to know what we valued. And then we had quarterly meetings, both hybrid, in person, and virtual, because some of my people have to be in the data center. They can't come over. And we would talk about the values and we would give examples of where we achieved those values. So I had one situation where something went sideways and the staff, without asking permission, made the corrective change. And so I would reward that, acknowledge that, celebrate that.
Yeah.
I also wrote a blog once a week for 8 years, just a short 200 words. But I would talk about values. I would talk about expectation. I would talk about where we succeeded. And you know what? I would apologize where we failed.
Oh, wow. So
Just went to
that's
my-
where in the subtitles came up with nurturing authentic relationships.
Mhm. And not only did it go out to 330 people on my team, but another 300 people across campus. So they would know with transparency what our priorities were, what we were working on. And, it just helped over probably 9 months slowly change from the heroics to more of proactive customer service.
So I guess when you aren't telling the truth, you're creating situations in which you can excel and save the day, right? Make it a little bit worse than it is. So you can position yourself as a hero. But what I hear you talking about is decentralizing that hero mentality so that everybody is a hero.
That's right.
Of those
That's right.
330. Wow.
And I would ask my direct reports to go out and meet with their peers across campus. So I had 7 direct reports. They would all meet with about 10 people, either once a month or 6 weeks, depending on how closely their organization worked together. I also would meet with my peers across campus every month and just ask, what are their goals and aspirations? What are they trying to achieve? How can I set and manage expectations with them? And third, genuinely care about their success. And when I first got to the university, I met with this professor who I'd worked with on a project 15 years earlier with Accenture, a successful statewide network project. And I said, okay, give me some advice. He goes, get out of the office and tell people you give a damn. And that was the best advice. because not hiding behind
Did he say it
not
like
hiding
that,
behind.
Brad? He did.
He's a trusty guy.
Yeah, he really sounded like he gave a damn, didn't he?
But it was fun to go out, walk across campus, go meet with my peers, go meet with my direct reports in their office, not mine. I
Oh,
didn't make them come to the ivory tower and supplicate.
oh,
And their teams would see me show up every week like clockwork, and I'd
yeah.
talk to people. Management by stumbling around.
Yeah, I always heard it by wandering around, but yeah, I mean, stumbling around's pretty good.
Yeah.
You're out there showing them you care. So, Brad, dial back into your early influencers. Who was someone who helped you understand the importance, besides the crusty guy? Who were some people that helped you really understand the importance of creating and nurturing? Because that's what you're talking about, creating and nurturing authentic business
Mhm.
relationships.
Well, I had very good mentors at the firm, and
Ah.
I would actually looked at all my annual reviews over 22 years. I know it's
Ah.
weird that I say them, but in my
It's fun.
in my second year, the partner told me I was working too hard.
What?
And he said, "You're setting a bad example for your team, and you're neglecting your family. So I
Oh
want you to
my.
dial it back."
What?
And how awesome is that? I was like,
Who ever
'cause,
heard of that?
I loved what I was doing, so I would just, and in IT, you can work 24 hours a day. So,
Oh, yeah.
but it just said, put some limits on that. And I learned also how to set and manage expectations. So one of my partners was a type A boss personality.
Uh-huh.
And one day I got a call, 5 o'clock. I'm trying to leave to have dinner with my wife. And he goes, "Brad, I need to," and I was a little scared, but I just finished a book by Naomi Curtin called Managed Expectations. And one of the techniques is just say, "Whoa," don't say no, because that'll set them off.
Yep.
And I literally said, "Whoa, when do you need this white paper?" "Well, let me check my calendar. I need it in 2 weeks." "Okay. How many pages do you want this white paper to be?" 3 pages. I was thinking 10. Do you have an example of white paper?" "Yeah, ask David. I did one XYZ Corp 10 years ago." Well, guess what? I went home and had dinner with my wife. Now,
A lovely dinner.
before I learned to use my words, I would have stayed up all night, canceled dinner, upsetting my wife and me. I would have stayed up all night and delivered a 10-page white paper and get yelled at.
Because it was way too long.
No expectations, sir.
Man, I absolutely love that. And you just said something so important. Before I learned to use my words,
Mhm.
communication brings clarification, right, Brad?
That's right. And the other phrase I use in the book is people are not mind readers. So if you're the boss,
Thank
you
you.
need to use your words. And
Yes.
so I was very conscious if I asked someone to do something, I would be sure I was clear and negotiate scope and timing and et cetera, and make it okay to. I needed to be clear on what I was asking for and not just assume they could figure it out. I had a
Right.
new direct report, very talented director, and he inherited a project that was supposed to be completed in the summer.
Mhm.
Well, this was a project that was going to affect 21,000 faculty and staff on campus. So it's a big
Wow.
deal.
Yeah.
And first one on one, he said, "Brad, I don't see how we can meet this deadline with quality." I said, "Well, one, thank you for having the courage to say something. And two, it took us 40 years to get this way. What's another 6 months?" No one wants to hit a date and have,
That's right.
but
Oh.
just being able to have the dialogue is important.
And the real work in that, Brad, I think, is for the people leader to get clear in her or his own mind. Here's what I want, because so often it's just, hey, we need to do this, go do it,
Right.
without managing your own expectations around that. I can remember one of my early mentors, every time we'd be in a meeting, before he would let us leave the table, his question was, are all our minds clear?
Mm.
I absolutely love that, because like it's last call. If you got any questions, anything left open here, say it, ask it now.
That's right.
That really
Very
helped me a
important.
lot. In so many organizations, Brad, though, it seems like the kinds of things we're talking about here, the establishment of core essentials, the reinforcement of core essentials, that creation of culture through core essentials, the clarification that comes from accurate communication and listening, right? All
Mhm.
these things get lost in the busyness of
Yeah,
business. They
yeah.
really do. And we just gloss right over them, particularly if you're a small business owner and you're wearing about 16 hats every day and
Right.
10 more on the weekends. Let's say we do the heavy lifting and establish this type of culture, a work positive culture is what we like to
Mhm.
call it in our community. How do I then communicate that to top talent who's interested in coming to work for us or with us, who comes from an entirely different culture background that's the more common type, I would suggest? How do we get them to say, to believe this is really how we are, and then to detox from that previous culture?
Well, you have to be mindful in your hiring. One advantage we had was the university is just a great place to work. It's very dynamic. You have
Mm.
54,000 students, 4,000 faculty, 21,000 staff.
Wow.
It's just the energy on campus, and the
Mm.
mission is very clear: teaching, research, and service. And to be part of that, it, and this is where I add, and we have a value on family first, that attracts people. So I
Mm.
had a network engineer who wanted to quit to go work for a startup. So sometimes you have to talk people off the ledge, but sometimes you can't.
That's
And
right.
so he was going to the startup in town. And I said, look, I met with them. I said, I don't say this to everybody, but if you don't like it, you can come back.
Mm.
So he went off to the startup. They fed him. They did his laundry. Uh, 2 weeks later, he calls and said, can I come back?
2 weeks?
He
Wow.
said it was a zoo. People were swinging from chandeliers. And he never got to go home. And he took the job because he was promised equity and more money. But he said, if I don't see my family, that's not helping my family.
Mm,
This was
mm.
15 years ago. He's still at the university.
Wow. That reminds me of one of Dr. Covey's statements about what if you climb the ladder of success only to get to the top and discover it's leaning against the wrong wall? So
Yeah,
your friend could have gotten all the equity and salary in the world, but if he was divorced and his kids wouldn't speak to him, what good would that
exactly.
be?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I've got to know, because here's all these people working for the University of Texas, a world class institution. How did family first get to be the first core essential there for you?
Well, in the first 90 days, I did my listening tour and I listened to my direct reports and I talked to customers and talked to others in the organization. And
Mhm.
I, as at Accenture, all my work was in higher ed and
Okay.
public organizations. So I understood that it's a different expectation for families.
Mhm.
And that's where I said, I need to take advantage of that because
Yeah.
I can't compete with Meta and Indeed and Facebook and Dell and all these other companies on
Mhm.
salary alone. It's just
Mhm.
not going to happen.
Mhm.
And so I think it bubbled up from the organization of this is what they wanted. And yeah, that became a prime directive.
Mm. So you listened first,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the cream rose to the top, and you simply skimmed it off and said, "Here's our first core essential." I absolutely love that.
Right.
That is a beautiful, proactive way to offer leadership. Let me ask you a question. What if the key to growing your work culture hides in plain sight? Take the free Work Positive Culture Assessment to discover it. Get insights in less than 4 minutes that transform your culture so you grow people and profits. You just answer 13 simple questions and discover your culture stage, strengths, and personalized next steps. Get your free aha culture moment at workpositive.today. Go to workpositive.today right now. Ed Engler is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Hey, Work Positive community, if you go into the show notes, you'll see the link to click to go over to his LinkedIn profile. Brad, love to hear from you there. Send him a
Hmm.
direct message. You see the link to his book, Spheres of Influence, on Amazon there. Be sure to click and go get yourself a copy. And then we'll talk a little bit more about his website, which you'll see a link there in the show notes for that too. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So this family first is my first core essential. That's going to attract people into the most excellent culture that you have. So they come to work with you, Brad. They join the team of 330, right? How do you retain them after they get there? Because so often our back door is about what, 10 times the size of our front door, and we just don't do the things that help retain that top talent. How did you retain these people?
So I set expectations in my blogs, and I would reinforce that over the years that I don't want you checking email 24 hours a day. If you're sick, I want you to stay home. If you have a school play, go to the school play. If you need to go to the doctor. If you need to take a vacation, do your training. And I would exemplify that. I would model that behavior. I would go on vacation, put one of my directors in the interim role, and I would not respond to email and I wouldn't check voicemail. And that helped them grow. But just making it a more fun place to work. And no one likes checking email at 10 at night. So
Hmm.
I think just setting those expectations. And I basically said, we have 330 people to back you up. So take care of
Wow.
what you need to take care of.
Wow. Wow. What a marvelous living out of that first core essential of family first. I love that. What are some of the challenges that you see among organizations, particularly since you wrote Spheres of Influence? I'm sure you've heard from lots of people who are trying to establish the kind of work positive culture that we're talking about here.
Mhm.
What are some of the challenges that you see them facing?
Well, dirty little secret is a lot of organizations do not have a strategy.
What?
Yeah. And I saw someone come in as a leader of a $4 billion organization. First thing, I'm going to build a strategy. He never did. 4 years went by, they were rudderless. Another leader came in and within a year had the strategy for the university.
Hmm.
I, in the first year, helped build, collaborating with the campus, an IT strategy, first one ever. And
Wow.
our
Ever?
priorities, first one
Ever?
ever, and we spend tens of millions of dollars on IT every year. And
Holy
so,
smokes. You spent all that money with no strategy?
correct. And that's
Ooh.
not unusual in organizations. So I started with the strategy and made sure I understood what the customers expected, made sure I understood what the organization could deliver, and then we would prioritize it. So I had a vice provost who wanted to change the classroom from lecturing to flipping the classroom so they could watch the lecture on technology and just have discussions in the class. Well, our learning management system was this 1990 buggy, horrible system. And
Was it
in one of my,
Blackboard?
no comment, one of my
I was
role,
teaching for a college. He's trying to use that at that time.
and we had faculty and students evaluate 15 products, and they picked Canvas, which is now being used in most
Right.
higher
Um,
education
yeah.
places. And uh, it was a because they picked it, there was this positive pull through. When I met with the president and the leadership, the
Mm.
president said, well, what do the faculty and students think? I said, well, sir, they picked it. And they
Wow.
unanimously recommended we go for it. So had I
Wow.
not got out of my office and go meet with the vice provost, I wouldn't have known that she was frustrated with that.
Mm.
And her
Mm.
organization and mine worked together over 2 years to transition 54,000 students, 4,000 faculty, and vice president for sales at Canvas would call me once a month to make sure everything was okay. Now,
Wow.
my prior vendor only came once a year for their maintenance check. I didn't hear and never responded. So I still talk to that VP for sales. He's in a different company now, but
Yeah.
we just built that trust and
That's good.
he genuinely cared about our success because he knew if we were successful, all the big Research One universities would follow. And that's exactly what happened.
Mm. So one of the great challenges is just not having a strategy. And we're back to clarification through communication, right?
Strategy and values.
Okay.
What's your mission? What are your vision? Where are you headed?
What are some other challenges that you see organizations experiencing in trying to put together the kind of culture we're talking about?
I think we talked about it at the beginning. Lack of honesty. People are not honest, and I think I gave everyone an opportunity to be honest, but when faced with dishonesty, and I think I learned later in my career than earlier, you need to move quickly on that. You don't let it fester. You don't let it go because they're setting a role model. I had one direct report who would manage down in draconian managers and then manage up to me in a different way that was not truthful with what was really happening on the team.
Just a lack of integrity there in leadership.
I had another director purposefully not give me budget information. It's like, what do you do? Yeah, it's like, this is not negotiable. And a third altered an email that covered up something. I do run the email system, so when I
might have access to it.
Well, I had this issue. I asked the chief information security officer to pull the records, and I held them up, and they were different. Those were the three directors I had to replace.
Wow. And I heard you say later in your career, you began to understand the importance of moving quickly to deal with those. What are some of the reasons we're so reluctant to deal with
Well,
those
I think you're
persons?
trying to help people be successful. And you try to give them the benefit of the doubt. We don't have the courage.
Yeah.
And when I was at a university in the Midwest, huge 2-year project, 200 people. When we did the postmortem after we successfully went live, and one of the tech managers said, "What I really liked about your management style is you didn't let issues fester. You nipped them in the bud."
Yeah.
And I think, it's having the bias towards action, I think is.
A bias towards action. That is beautiful. Because unless you clean out the litter box, you can spray all the potpourri on it you want. It's still going to smell the same, isn't it? Yeah.
That's right.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Brad Englert is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive podcast. Man, I could just keep talking to you all day and listen to your stories about ways that you did this. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. I mentioned earlier that in the show notes, we've got the link to his LinkedIn profile. Obviously, you're going to want to go and DM him and get to know him better. Do yourself a favor and go over to Amazon, get a copy of his book, Spheres of Influence, How to Create and Nurture Authentic Business Relationships. Go get that right now. And then you mentioned, I mentioned earlier that there's a link to your website that's in our show notes. Tell us what we're going to find when we click that link and go over to your website.
One tab will have a free sample of the book.
Okay.
The second tab will be how to buy the book, and there's ebook and an audiobook.
Okay.
And third, how to schedule time on my calendar.
Oh, okay. So we can come on and talk to you in person. Right. Right. Well, man, that is so generous of you. Thank you so much for that. The Work Positive community always wants me to ask my guests. So Brad Englert, I've got to ask you, what's one thing you would encourage the Work Positive community to do starting today to create the kind of positive work culture that we're talking about here?
I would ask you to be strategic and intentional on which business relationships you want to create and nurture. So your boss is obvious. Direct reports, obvious. Your customers, well, you don't have to meet with all your customers. Who are your best customers? Your vendors, you have to meet with all your vendors. Who are your strategic vendors? So just pick a relationship. Start with your boss and ask, what are your goals and aspirations? Do I understand that? 2, be better at setting and managing expectations. And 3, genuinely care. If you want your boss to be successful, I guarantee you'll be successful.
Wow. Thank you so much for those words of wisdom. Work Positive community is better for this conversation today. I know I'm better too. I've learned so much from you today, Brad. Thanks so much for the gift of your time and wisdom. Be sure to go get your copy of Spheres of Influence right now. Brad, thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
I'm so grateful you joined our conversation about creating positive work cultures that grow people and profits. connect with me directly on LinkedIn today. Just search for Dr. Joey Fawcett, or you can click the link in your show notes. When you send your connection request, mention you're a Work Positive Podcast listener, because I want to give you a free digital copy of my Work Positive Team Edition book. It's a $19.95 value, but I want to share it with you free because it contains practical strategies that I personally use with clients to transform toxic work environments into thriving cultures. We explore in that book how to create a positive work culture, and we do so again in every episode of this podcast. Our LinkedIn connection allows you and me to directly talk about your specific challenges, so feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. I personally read and respond to all those messages because I genuinely care about your work positive success. So go to LinkedIn and let's connect. Remember to mention you're a podcast listener to receive your free Work Positive Team Edition book. I look forward to seeing you on our next episode of the Work Positive Podcast.